Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be looking at a scenario of what if the Brazilian Empire from WICSO returned. Now, this country encompasses about half, maybe a little more, maybe a little less, South America. It's a little hard to skew because this gets a little distorted the further south you go. And yeah, this thing is probably one of the largest countries on this map. Again, hard to like be able to tell because, of course, it gets a little harder to see north to the poles. I can't even speak today, but yeah, that ties into what I'm saying next because I've been trying to do all these videos in one take and one take only because it gives me more time to record videos, which is fun, and it allows me to spend less time editing, which takes forever and is quite frankly not fun and not enjoyable. So yeah, it'd be interesting to take a look at what if this country returned in modern WICSO, or not modern WICSO, this is my perfect WICSO map. But yeah, let's see what this ends up looking like. Now to start off, this country is probably one of the strongest in the world, maybe like top 3, top 4, I don't know. It's hard to skew once again, but yeah, we're just gonna see them kind of doing what they do best and expanding. And the first thing they're gonna do is head down to this guy because this guy is absolutely scarred. They lost their capital, which was up in this region here. And from here, they're just gonna kind of just get annexed by the Brazilians. Now, this country would probably put up resistance, but they can't really, because of course they're tiny, and Brazil is one of the strongest countries in the world. And yeah, that guy's just gonna get erased from the map. Pretty simple as that. And from here, Brazil has already expanded. Brazil is probably one of the most expansionist countries in WICSO's history, and we're not going to see that calming down whatsoever because they have ambitions. Without a threat from America or any other elitist countries like China, India, West Africa, all those guys, they can kind of just do their own thing. And so they're going to do exactly that, is they're going to declare war on Central America. And yeah, this guy's um not gonna do well against Brazil. First, the Brazilians push up against the Darien Gap, then they kind of just push through it forcefully. From here, they're gonna occupy the Panama Canal, which is gonna cause a huge amount of cost because then you gotta go all the way around South America, and yeah, that's not good. Central America is gonna basically collapse under pressure here, and Brazil's just gonna have it their way. And so we get to look at a peace treaty where this country is going to be losing quite a bit of land. And if I can do the right thing here, enable the province layer, they're going to be losing all the land up to Panama here, which is a pretty large amount of land, if I do have to say so, because that gives Brazil complete control over the Panama Canal, which is probably the most important canal in the entire world because it connects the Caribbean and the Atlantic to the Pacific, which a lot of stuff goes through. Almost as important, I mean, the Suez Canal is almost as important because it links this area of Europe to Asia. Actually, it might be a little more important because I think more historically would flow through that region. I don't know. But, anyways, from here, we can actually go back to focusing on Brazil because now they're going to become a lot richer and their economy will just become a whole bunch stronger. And at this point, they're basically going to say, we're going to unite the whole world. Or not the whole world, probably. Probably just South America and then maybe parts of North America. But they want to unite a lot of the world as much as they can under a fascist sphere. Because remember, this thing is a fascist state. And so they're going to go on their next conquest, which is kind of a war. It kind of isn't, where they're just going to kind of just take these islands away from Caribbean. And eventually, Caribbean is just going to be forced back to the Bahamas and Cuba because Brazil's just going to kind of take these islands. And there's not really a clapback from this because the Caribbean country can't. And yeah, from here, they're just going to move southwards because their next opponent is probably the next weakest, and that is Peru over here. Peru is another country who's lost a lot of land because of the resurgence of this country, and they're going to see a similar fate that the Central American country did. They're going to lose their entire coastline, and from here, they're just going to surrender. At this point, we're going to see this country getting fully annexed, which is probably the last thing this country wants to experience. In the actual timeline, they got annexed into a puppet state of Brazil, but since there isn't really anyone opposing them, they don't really need to create puppet states. They can kind of just do whatever they want, like annexing entire countries. From here, they're not going to stop. They're just going to continue into this guy. They're going to frame as a traitor because they're no longer fascists. Yeah, that's what they're doing. And very quickly, they're going to lose their capital because this thing is weak. And at this point, this guy is nothing, so they're just going to surrender. And once again, the Brazilians are kind of just doing what they want. And no one is objecting because nobody cares to object because they're all self centered. No, that's not it, but nobody can really object because this thing at this point is probably the strongest country in the world. And, yeah, there are only 4 countries in South America left, and one by one, they will all eventually fall. Brazil is uncontrolled. They're just going to keep expanding. And yeah, the first to go will be the red country over here because they hold the most valuable land, meaning Brazil wants to get rid of them the soonest. And so Brazilian forces will begin to push in, very quickly taking the northern area, then moving along the coast as they do best, taking this area, and at this point, they're going to lose their capital. From here, the red team will attempt to keep fighting, but at this point, what does it matter because you're just going to get incorporated anyway. And at this point, yeah, Brazil's just going to completely annex this guy. And yeah, they're just going to declare war on the rest of the continent because, um, again, nobody's going to stop them. And I do want to say I've been taking this fast paced. We're only 6, almost 7 minutes into the video. I hate myself for saying it like that, but we are not far into this video whatsoever. So I'm going to slow it down because these last 3 countries, they're going to be working together to at least drain as much as of Brazil's resources as possible. And they're going to be launching an invasion first. And I might have said differently a couple seconds ago, but yeah, from here we're going to see forces from each of these countries beginning to push out in order to destroy as much as they can. They use really unrealistic strategies of pushing really deep into this territory. They're going to kind of just destroy everything they can, using almost all their resources, so that Brazil has really nothing to gain out of this war besides territory. From here, we head on over to the brown team, who will begin doing much of the same, wrecking a whole bunch of the territory they just annexed, and doing some very unconventional things against the military of Brazil. And from here, they're going to occupy almost all the former red team, and then they move into the lime team, doing much of the same. The people here are honestly probably not opposed to this, given how Brazil is likely treating these people and trying to incorporate their national identities into a national identity of Brazil. At this point, they begin to enter into territory that just transformed into Brazil at the start of the video. At this point, they will be stopped because this is an unrealistic amount of expansion. But first, I do want to get rid of this little corridor I accidentally created. This would most definitely fall under the control of the occupiers. But yeah, at this point, the Brazilians will stop these advances, and they will begin to use very similar unethical strategies against these guys because these guys were the ones who started it. And yeah, this is seen as the brown team will just begin to absolutely lose this war, getting absolutely swept out of Brazilian territory. And they don't really have anything to lose in this territory either now, because they literally just destroyed most of it. They can kind of just push through. Over in this area here, they're going to do much of the same. It's not much that can be destroyed other than along the coastline. But at this point, these 3 have no occupation in Brazil, and it's going to begin to fall back on them pretty quickly. If only they had tried to create a revolution against Brazil, maybe they would have been able to stop this. But unfortunately for them, the invasion will just begin to push through their territory. Red Chile will get it worse because their population is a lot lower, and the Brazilians can kind of just push in. From here, they're going to lose their capital in the brown team. The brown team will go ahead and surrender over in hopes of defending their people. Soon after, much similar things happen in Chile, as most of the country will surrender, except for a few fighters in the south who will eventually be eradicated. From here, the Patagonian country will try its best to defend itself, And Brazil will actually have some struggles moving into this territory because they're completely unfamiliar with it. They've never invaded it once. But eventually, we do see most of this country falling under the occupation of Brazil. And it's basically like at this point, you're going to lose the war, so why are you still fighting? And the Patagonian country will realize this, and they will go ahead and surrender over, including these islands all the way over here, which they do control. And, yeah, this is scary. And so at the end of this war, a whole bunch of countries will place a whole bunch of sanctions on Brazil in hopes of like stopping their expansion, because if this thing gets out, it's destroying the world because it can take on countries one by one, and then once those guys are gone, they're just pushing through greater, larger countries, and then those guys are gone. So yeah, as for these guys' capitals, we cannot do that. Just get rid of them. And for the first time in history, a continent has been united in WICSO. And yeah, that's too much dark blue for me. So we're gonna see a coalition forming. And so, yeah, we're going to create a brand new layer. This layer will be the alliances layer. I know it's probably not visible, visible on the screen, but after I enable all these layers that I forgot to enable before, including the military bases and ports, we can go ahead and look at this because we're going to see a whole bunch of countries joining this anti-Brazilian coalition because they don't want South America to become the global dominating power. Starting off in North America, we're going to see the addition of Mexico, the Central American country who just got obliterated, Caribbean, who just got obliterated, America, who is a large rival to Brazil, and then Louisiana, just because, and then probably going to see West Mexico joining, and a whole bunch of these countries over here who are opposed to the existence of a giant Brazil. And yeah, that's just North America. As now we head on over to West Africa, where we're gonna see this orange country, who used to be fascist, joining up with the alliance, and this Ghana kind of country joining because they used to be controlled by a fascist country. And then it kind of just spirals into a whole bunch of countries who were controlled by fascist countries, or were fascist countries like West Africa, joining up with this in order to stop Brazil. In Europe, there probably wouldn't be any countries joining because it's so far out. Asia, probably the same, but we do see China joining because of the threats to their power. And on the same line, we're going to see this green country joining in as well. And at this point, we head down to Oceania, where we're going to see yet another former fascist country joining, as well as a Queensland country. And oh boy, this coalition is big, and Brazil is kind of ready. Brazil will begin to militarize rapidly in order to prevent this thing from killing them. However, these guys may have been planning this as we head over to Central America, where we're going to see a rapid fallback in Brazilian forces. As for the second time, it becomes super expensive to ship things from the Pacific to the Atlantic, as the Panama Canal is under different occupation. Heading over to the Caribbean region, we're going to see that the Caribbean country is completely obliterating the Navy of Brazil with a little help from Mr. Uncle Sam up here. Except that's not Uncle Sam, that's Uncle someone. I don't know, but he's not Uncle Sam. He's probably more teal. Anyways, we head back down to South America, where they just breached the Darien Gap, and a whole bunch of forces from across the world are flowing into this area. And I don't know what's happening here. I don't like it, so we're just gonna do that. And now we can actually look at the scenario again, because Brazil is losing a lot of territory rapidly, and they cannot militarize quick enough to do anything about it. From here, we're going to see a whole bunch of landings with a whole bunch of forces from West Africa and Caribbean and America flowing into northern areas of Venezuela and Guyana. At this point, Brazil is kind of falling apart, and Brazil knows they cannot beat this whole coalition because, of course, they were planning it, and they don't have time to repel this because their capital is right there, and the forces are very close to doing that. And once their capital falls, their entire empire is going to rebel away from them. So they're going to try and get out of this war as quickly as possible because this war is not favoring them whatsoever. And so they're going to try to back out. Unfortunately, however, these guys don't care. They want to liberate this continent. The purple forces over here will go ahead and link up with the lime forces in that area of Venezuela. And at this point, they begin to push into areas of Ecuador, which have been occupied for a while. And then this little group up here, they're going to continue their thing. And eventually, it's going to begin pushing down. And from here, nothing stands in the way between the capital and that. And the whole Brazilian army is going to be here. Fortunately, however, the Brazilian army is just going to kind of betray their government because, yeah, at this point, we're going to see a lot of the northern coastal region falling apart as forces from across the world are just going to kind of move in. So at this point, we head down to the south, where regions that were recently occupied will just kind of begin to rebel. Starting off with Patagonia, who doesn't want to be a part of this thing whatsoever. Then moving up to the brown team, which is the wrong color of brown, but who cares? Then the red Chilean country, and then the yellow team over here in this area. Then the pink team over here, and that's also not the right color. But Brazil is very quickly falling apart, and yeah, they're going to begin to use some very unethical strategies here, where they kind of just throw civilians at these guys. And it's going to work, and they're going to retake their capital, but it's going to cost them a lot of resources. From here, a lot of these rebellions will begin to get mostly put down in regions like Peru and the Bolivian one. The Bolivian one's going to be resorted to just this, and then the brown team one's going to get almost completely eradicated. Then the purple one's going to get mostly eradicated, and then the red Chilean one is going to be mostly stable, but they're going to lose a lot of this coastal region. But at this point, the whole world is looking at Brazil, and a whole bunch more countries, which I'm not going to add to the alliance layer. A lot are going to join, but I'm just going to talk about them. More specifically, a whole bunch of the countries in the South African region here will join because they don't want to see a repeat of history where a certain someone gets certain ideas. And that certain someone will also be joining this war against Brazil. In areas like Mesopotamia, we're going to see all these guys joining. In Europe, we'd probably see some of the Western European states joining. In Asia, we might see countries like India joining, these guys in South China, a whole bunch of countries in Oceania. And then the rest of North America would probably join this war. And yeah, at this point, you are cooked. And more rebellions will begin to show their face. Starting off in this area over here, we're going to see this guy rebelling. And soon after, we're going to see this guy rebelling. I know it's kind of hard to tell what countries these are, but these two are countries. It's just a little harder to find because their borders aren't necessarily here. You can kind of see what I'm talking about here if I kind of just like adjust it to the thing. Like this area here. I'm bad at drawing borders, but all of this is a part of the orange country. It kind of looks like Honduras now that I think about it, but all this is part of the orange country. And then as for the blue country, their borders look something like uh this here. It might include that province. I don't know, but yeah, that's what their borders look like. And a lot of these other countries were shown earlier in the video, so I don't feel like I need to explain those ones. But yeah, now we get to see these guys getting clapped back against as groups like the Patagonians will see a whole bunch of success in reliberating territory, as well as the Brown team, who will retake their own capital and these regions over here. And yeah, it's just bad for the Brazilians at this point because they literally can't fight against their civilians anymore because the civilians are filled with hatred for their government. And this government is just absolutely falling apart. They can't do anything anymore. If the civilians you're throwing at the enemy are joining up with the enemy, then yeah, you basically have nothing. And at this point, we're going to see more rebellion surfacing as the lime team will rebel over here in this region here, and then the red team as well in this region here. And it's not really red team, it's like a weird color. And yeah, at this point, Brazil will be completely kicked out of this South American area. And from here, we're going to see the Peruvian forces beginning to push up into this region. We're going to see yet another rebellion in this green area here. And yeah, at this point, Brazil will just completely fall apart as the Cyan team will be restored up here in this Colombian-Venezuelan area. And the capital of Brazil will once again be taken. At this point, we're going to see something very similar to the normal timeline happening, where a large group in the middle of the continent will just break away in hopes of forming a new Brazilian government. But yeah, both of these, they hate each other, so they're going to target each other. Eventually, it doesn't really matter. These guys will be united under Brazil, but a lot of the area that belongs to Brazil will eventually fall under this occupation here. And yeah, bye bye Brazil. This would take a lot longer than it would to represent it how I did there, but eventually this thing would be eradicated from the map because fascism is not liked. Because, well, I wonder why. But yeah, Brazil, if it returned, would probably immediately have a coalition formed against it. But to lengthen the video, I didn't have that happen. So yeah. Also, looking at this green guy, this is not where the green country is. Their capital is right there, and they were like over in this region. Anyways, that's enough of me yapping. And yeah, I do want to end this video here. If you made it this far into the video, make sure you do subscribe. And also, liking the video shows that you enjoy this type of content and you would like to see more. That's all from me, and I will see you all in the next video.